Welcome into another episode of the KC Sports Authority podcast. I'm your host, Keegan Russell. In tonight's episode, we're going to do things a little differently. The last few weeks, it's been a lot of KU basketball talk, and rightfully so. It has been one of the most impressive, most important off seasons in KU basketball, recent history at least. But tonight, we're going to continue talking basketball with the boys, but this time we're going to transition to the NBA talk, which we haven't done in a while. So we want to talk about the upcoming finals series of the Nuggets and the Heat, which actually starts tonight by the time this is up and loaded. Give you guys some predictions, talk about the series, talk about the rest of the NBA playoffs. And then for you Jayhawk fans, of course, talk a little bit about Christian Braun, as he is the only Jayhawk in the NBA Finals this year, but has the chance to repeat as national champs once in college, once in the NBA. But before we get into that, just as a reminder, you can find our podcast over on YouTube and on Spotify. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on both platforms. If you're listening on Spotify and you like the content so far, give us a 5-star review. That definitely helps us out and gets us more exposure. If you're over on YouTube, hit us up in the comment section below and let us know how we're doing, what you like about each of our episodes. And of course, again, hit that subscribe button and share it with your friends. And as a reminder, you can also follow us on social media. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram now at KCSA Pod. Would love for you guys to hit us up on any of those and just share some of your sports takes, whether it's local sports takes. If you want to hit us up with some of your NBA Finals talk, feel free to do that. All right, boys, let's get into it. The NBA Finals is upon us. Spencer, we have been talking for months about needing to do some more NBA content, and just unfortunately, we haven't gotten into it. It's been a lot of KU basketball, like we said. So this episode's long overdue for some playoff talk, but we finally get the chance to just talk about the finals in general. I know, JB, you haven't been on an NBA episode with us before. That's totally fine. But this is one we've been excited about doing and are looking forward to finally doing this. So the NBA Finals matchup is set. We have the 1 seed in the West, the Denver Nuggets, against the 8 seed in the East, the Miami Heat. And of course, we're going to break down how both of these teams got to the finals, because both had very interesting conference finals series. But before we get into that, just want to get your guys' takes on the playoffs as a whole this year. Moments that stood out to you, teams that impressed you, teams that disappointed you. Obviously, I know both of you guys love to talk some LeBron James, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But Spencer, let's start with you. Just kind of give me your take on the playoffs so far.
Oh man, they've been a lot of fun this year, and they've been probably the most parity we've seen in the NBA. And man, I want to say 10 years because it's either been Braun going every single year, or the Warriors, or Spurs, a mixture of the two, whatever. So I think it's been really, really fun. There's a lot of takeaways, a lot of disappointments, and a lot of really impressive teams. I think for me, some of the big disappointments here is just the lack of star players kind of showing up to some of these games. I'm a big Embiid guy, but he fell very, very flat these playoffs. Obviously, I'm a big Braun guy. He's playing hurt. The Lakers went a lot farther than they probably should have. So that you can't really label that a disappointment. But the Celtics, I mean, Tatum and Brown forgetting how to play basketball in games 4 through 7 is pretty tough to watch. So a lot of takeaways here. A couple teams that I think were really kind of under the radar disappointments. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they really showed that they were not a complete team, and they have some really gaping holes that they got to address this offseason. I'd say that the New York Knicks, I really, really liked their chances against the Heat, especially because they were, the lower seed, and Miami, obviously, we'll talk about later. I just didn't think, was going to have a big playoff run in them. So I was like, this is the year the Knicks go to the conference finals. And then RJ Barrett does what he does, has a tendency to do sometimes, and just shoots poorly. And Julius Randle takes 40-foot threes and nobody knows why. And so that's definitely a team that I think this could have been their year to make a big push, and they kind of missed it. So a lot of storylines throughout it, but I think they've been really fun so far this year.
JB, how about
Yeah,
you? What takeaways do you have?
man, I was so I was so tuned in to the Kings versus the Warriors. I was
Great series.
Oh
Very
my
good series.
goodness, what a series. that series really, really ignited my love for NBA playoff basketball.
Hmm.
You know, we talk about in basketball, in the basketball world, we talk about how sometimes the college game is just way more fun to watch because it's very intense defensively specifically, and of course it's really fun to root for your alma mater. It's fun to get into that culture, I think. But man, when you watch the NBA, sometimes the narrative is, well, it's just an offensive showmanship kind of thing to watch, and it's really not as intense. I felt like I was watching college basketball intensity when I was watching that series. It was so much fun. I was disappointed that the Kings didn't win. I wasn't shocked, but I was disappointed. Um, as a true LeBron stan, I'm gonna root against the Warriors just about every time. I've warmed up a little bit, but how great it was to see LeBron take out the Warriors. The whole LeBron versus Steph rivalry, if you will, it had an interesting turn um, in this playoffs, and you know, to Spencer's point, the Lakers really did outperform where I think a lot of us saw them uh, toward the end of the season, probably not even making the playoffs, but the trade deadline was a huge advantage for them. They made the right changes. They got incredibly better defensively. They were post what was it, post All-Star break, the best
Hmm.
defensive team. So you know, I look at those things like, man, this playoffs was really fun to watch. We've had some pretty good stories, some heartbreak as well. But ultimately, we've written a pretty interesting ending, I guess, as we come into the finals, where you can have a you can have a great story either way with either team winning. So it's really been a treat.
Yeah, I think this has been a great year, playoffs year as far as are concerned. I don't think really any series was one of those just overwhelming where there's on paper these teams just don't belong in the gym together. Even the fact that the Nuggets sweep the Lakers, um, you still like it was a competitive series the whole time and great efforts by the Lakers, even though they fell short. But I thought just the playoffs in general so far has lived up to the hype. Everyone, like you said, everyone talks about NBA playoffs are always disappointing. It's not like watching March Madness. Usually the teams with the best talent went out. And I think this year you saw a couple of things that I've taken away is talent alone is not going to win you a series. It might win you a game or two, but talent alone doesn't win a series. I think that was evident with the Suns debacle against the Nuggets. You could argue that Durant and Booker are more talented. You could even argue that Devin Booker, to that point, was the best performer in the playoffs. Um, Next to my guy Jimmy Butler, of course. But you could argue that on paper, talent wise, they were right up there. Again, Warriors, Lakers lived up to the hype. The LeBron Curry legacy games series, all that definitely lived up to the hype. And I just think overall it was good. But the other thing I did notice too is you had a lot of really interesting coaching decisions this playoff run so far. Ones that I would question a lot. Obviously the most recent one being the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla. I think the inexperience as a head coach definitely showed. Um, but then I even think back to a couple of different series games where I'm like, why is this guy not playing? The Lakers being one of them. I don't think Darvin Ham's a good coach. I think LeBron is the coach and Darvin Ham's just there.
He's
But
along for the ride.
even like the Nugget series, after the first two games, Jared Vanderbilt played like next to no minutes. Earlier in the playoffs, before he got hurt, Mo Bamba was playing no minutes at all. And you're like, you need some size against Jokic. Get this 7'2" guy in there, even if he's not going to score. He's a body. Um, so I just feel like there's a lot of questionable rotations, guys getting minutes that shouldn't be, guys not getting minutes that should. Even back to the 76ers series, you know, again, PJ Tucker's a very important guy, but the dude brings nothing offensively. And there were times where I'm like, you got to get somebody who's going to be a consistent shooter in there. roll with Tyrese Maxey, Harden, and Embiid, and get somebody else in there to score. Just again, and of course, Doc Rivers gets fired, Monty Williams is let go. Monty Williams, I actually think he's a very good coach. I was surprised by that one. I think that's just more the fact of they've underperformed with him based on getting to the finals appearance a couple years ago. But it's been a fun playoff series so far. But then that gets us to the matchup in the finals. Obviously, I think if we sat here 4 or 5 months ago, I don't think the consensus amongst the three of us, or even amongst the majority of NBA fans, was Nuggets Heat in the finals. And I also don't think it's going to be a highly watched series in the sense of excitement from the casual NBA fan. Because your top teams, the Bucks get blown out by the Heat in the first round. I did not see that coming, even though I did. The second the playoffs started, I put several wagers down on the Heat to come out in the East because they were such heavy underdogs. And I think Spoelstra is the best coach of the NBA, and I think Jimmy Butler is built for the playoffs. He is the closest thing we will ever see to Jordan and Kobe, in my opinion, the way he plays. But I was very impressed with their ability to make it out of the East, considering that everything was set up for the Sixers to finally jump the Celtics and jump over them. The Bucks felt like you had an easy path getting what was considered a weak 8 seed in the Heat. And then here we go, Jimmy Butler playoff mode activated and dominates the Bucks series, dominates the Knicks series, dominates the first 3 games against the Celtics before they go on a struggle, but still gets it done in Game 7. So as we're getting to this matchup, let's go back to the conference finals, and let's start on the West side with the Lakers. You guys already said that they've probably overachieved a little bit based on how they played throughout the whole year. But you get to the conference finals, no one doubted the Nuggets, I think, in the playoffs. I think they are one of the perfectly constructed teams. Great coach, fantastic 2 stars on their team, great role players, good depth, and their play style is just fantastic. But you get the LeBron legacy series. Can he overcome going up against the top team? Can him and Anthony Davis do this again? And we see the Nuggets just sweep them. I guess my question for you guys, does that make it more impressive what the Nuggets are doing? Or is it just a fact of LeBron, AD carried them enough to get to that stage, but the Nuggets were just the far better team? Because I know both of you guys are gonna, you guys will both sit here and defend LeBron a lot. So I want to get you guys time to talk about and get that out of your system. But to me, it was the Nuggets were just a far better team, and they stood no chance matchup wise. There's just the Lakers didn't have enough.
Well, I think there's a really important thing to keep in mind is that the Lakers start the season with this roster. They are a 4th to 5th seed at worst. I think this is a really well constructed roster, and Rob Pelinka did after years of not doing anything and signing Westbrook that trade was. I was losing a little faith in him, but picking up Rui Hachimura, getting Vanderbilt, even getting D'Angelo Russell. I know he didn't play well in the Western Conference Finals, but he played really good earlier in the playoffs. So that's the big thing to keep in mind. It wasn't as much of a disparity in terms of a matchup as I think people thought, because the Lakers were a 7th seed and they were so atrocious early in the season. But I'm in agreement with you. The Nuggets were just a better team, and they were a well better coached team. So Darvin Ham, it's kind of hard to notice bad coaching sometimes. You'll notice a player not playing. You'll notice substitutions being all out of whack, rotations. When I saw them go under the screen 7 straight times against Jamal Murray, and it was the same result every single time. You saw Dennis Schroeder looking to the sideline saying, "Guys, I need help. Like, something needs to change." I just don't know as a coach how you don't adjust. And the entire media narrative around the Lakers, I felt very bad for Mike Malone and the Nuggets, because the narrative was the Lakers were pretty much sweeping the Nuggets at this point because they were right in there every single game and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, they tried to strike fear in the Nuggets by saying Rui Hachimura is the Jokic stopper, which I was just
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
know
you
about that.
you literally heard Draymond Green went on his podcast last week or so and was talking about how he would have defended him. He goes, "It's not that hard to figure out, guys. Like you know how Jokic is going to play. Well,
Yeah,
don't throw AD at him on the top. Let AD sit in the paint and be your
yeah,
backside defender. Put a LeBron or a Rui on him for a more extended time. That way, when you do have to switch, then you've got AD on the backside." And I
yeah.
think to your point right there, Darvin Ham got outcoached or
Very good
just
coach.
didn't make the adjustments. And I felt like Schroeder was the only outside of LeBron first. I mean, outside of AD defensively, Schroeder was the only one that was really bringing any intensity, which is why I was
Yeah,
like, why is Jared Vanderbilt not out here? He's the best
yeah,
defender on the team. And he should have gone a game where like he did earlier in the playoffs and just strictly like he guarded Steph just strictly, which is a weird matchup. But he should have done the same thing on Jamal for a while.
oh,
It was one of those series
100%.
where every time like you could tell AD was flustering the
Yeah,
Nuggets and he was
oh,
giving
absolutely.
Jokic a hard time. You could see Jokic getting frustrated. But what happened? Mike Malone adjusted their gameplay.
Yeah,
And Jamal got
absolutely.
more involved in the pick and roll, started hitting down jumpers. They finally got Aaron Gordon loose a little bit here and there. It definitely helps when Michael Porter Jr. is knocking down threes. So it was, yeah, I think it was a perfect example of you got severely out coached because you
Yeah,
do have two of the top stars in the league, and you could say star power wise is probably more of LeBron and AD than it is Jokic and Murray. Um, but it just didn't feel like the Lakers played to what their style should have been. Like it got,
yeah,
I mean, LeBron, obviously we could sit here and talk about how bad shooting LeBron was from three and how he just settled. Maybe a lot of that was the foot. I don't know. He wasn't quite as explosive. But
yeah.
yeah, they just got out coached.
Well, if you and I will, this will be my one LeBron defense for the night, and then I'll call it good. I know a lot of people are trying to say the foot's an excuse. He legitimately has a torn tendon in
Yeah.
his foot and will have
It,
surgery. And if you watch the birthday game this year where he dropped 47 points, it's not the same player. It's just not. Even the game where he dropped 40 at the end,
Mm-hmm.
it's just not the same guy. He was scoring, but he wasn't explosive. He wasn't able to just blow by people. I mean, it was through footwork, it was through pump fakes, free throw lines. I mean, so that is the one defense I'll have LeBron. He definitely was not 100%. And you could tell just by watching, that's why he's settling because he doesn't want to drive, doesn't trust the foot. But I mean, to your point again, they were out coached. Nuggets were the better team. Two last things I'll talk about. Michael Porter Jr. is the 6'10 J.R. Smith. I've never seen this guy shoots better than anyone else with a hand in his face. And if it's wide open, I'd rather leave him wide open because if you contest it, it's going in. And then Jamal Murray, I think, other than Jimmy Butler's, I think probably the most underrated playoff performer in the entire NBA. And I think a lot of people forgot about him because of the torn ACL. But this dude in the bubble was like the best player. It was just insane. Him
yeah,
and TJ Warren put on such a spectacular
Yeah.
show for those couple weeks. So yeah, I think the Nuggets were by far the better team, roster, coaching, everything.
yeah. Speaking of the bubble, I mean, to have the same Final Four teams, the same
Yeah,
conference championships as we had in the bubble, with albeit the bubble was a couple years ago. What are the core members of each of these teams? The exact same core is in the Heat, as it is in the Lakers, as it is in the Nuggets and the Boston Celtics. So I don't want to hear any more talk about Mickey Mouse Championship. That is done. It's done. It's not a Mickey Mouse ring. I've defended it before and I will continue to defend it even harder now. You know, that series was probably, uh, to stay on topic with Denver versus Lakers, it was the most competitive sweep of all time.
It really
It felt like
was.
that in
I
so
agree.
many.
Yeah,
It was insanity. I would say that that Lakers team really kind of goes as AD goes,
mhm.
and especially when LeBron is hurt, he there's going to be naysayers that might say, well, if he was hurt, how did he put up a near 40-point triple double in Game 4? And my answer to that is because he's LeBron
Yeah.
freaking James. Like it's, I'm
He, he
Yeah,
sorry.
may
stop.
be he may be more of a diva now than some years, but
Yeah,
he's still got that killer instinct. I mean, Jimmy Butler said it in his press conference today. Jason Tatum even mentioned in his, he goes, it doesn't matter that I'm hurt. I still have a job to go do. I still have to go out and perform.
yeah,
He's like, it's unfortunate. It sucks, but I mean, the fans still expect me to perform. I expect myself to perform, and I still got to go out there and do it. If you're unable to play, that's a whole different story. So I'll give him the credit there. Other than his super embarrassing, awful flop of barely getting touched and just flying out of bounds as if
That
he just got murdered on camera. That
that
was
was a little bad.
atrocious.
I
Not
can't,
quite as
That
bad as
was
some Marcus Smart flops, but man,
I
that
can't
was
defend them
bad.
on that one. Yeah, that was bad.
I was it was bad. As a LeBron guy, it was bad.
But
The
it
Lakers kind of ran
was.
into
No,
no, go
keep
ahead.
going. You're good. You're good.
I was just gonna say Lakers ran into a buzzsaw, man. I mean, Denver's clicking at all the right times. Jamal Murray is back and showing why he's such a good player. And it's unfortunate. I will say that he was absolutely fouled on the final drive. And it I'm sorry. If he did you honestly watch that and see him drive to the bucket? It was like watching a running back running it at the you know fourth down 1 yard line, and he's just running into a wall of people and that swallow him whole. And unfortunately, he didn't get the touchdown. So it's just so frustrating to me when people grab at arms and pull you down and tackle you, and nothing is called because it's the end of the game and it's high
Sure.
pressure, and a ref
Yeah.
swallows a whistle. I will defend that. I really think there was a foul there. I understand why people think there wasn't, but I've seen photographic evidence that backs it up. So
There was a lot of contact.
There was.
I
just
don't
wanted
think
them
it would have changed the series at all.
just
No,
give
I
them
think they
one
would have
game.
lost in overtime.
Just give him one game. I don't care if LeBron and the Lakers lose in 5. At least he didn't get swept. And
Right.
it's but unfortunately they did get swept, and it starts up this conversation, this narrative, kind of how we were talking earlier about, he's considering retirement because he had a couple cryptic tweets.
I
It's
think if anything, the rumor now, and I could see some merit to this. I don't think it would happen, but he's got the foot injury. He's gonna have
yeah,
surgery at some point. There is talk of, well, if he really does want to play with his son, how about he sits out a year, keeps the body recovered, delays his foot surgery a while so that the recovery period takes a long time, and then just instead of doing the Jordan, all right, I'm retiring and come back, he just sits on injury for the year to hold that off of his body, and then he gets to play with his son next year. I don't think that would actually happen because I think LeBron's too much of a competitor to.
Yeah.
But I do think, and maybe it's just the injury. I think this playoff series, you saw the toll that 20 years and 20 years of playoff run. So it's like, I think someone did the math. It's like 24 total seasons is having on him. He looked tired
Oh my
and he
gosh.
looked
Yeah.
worn down. And I'm sure a lot of that is the foot because you lose a lot of explosive power. Um, but this could
yeah.
be not to make this a LeBron episode. We can talk about that more another
Oh,
time.
please.
But this could be the start of the slowdown for him as he's coming
Yeah.
down the stretch here.
It is.
He's
It could be.
still one of the best athletes in the world right now, and he's still an amazing player. But this could be signs of the body starting to slow down. He is very good at keeping himself in top shape, so we'll see. But anyway, let's jump to the other side of the NBA playoffs because the NBA Eastern Conference Finals. If you want to say the Western Conference Finals was the most competitive sweep, you could say that the Eastern Conference Finals was the least competitive 6-game series until Game 7. The Heat come out, surprise and shock everyone in Game 1 up in Boston. They steal the game. They did exactly what they needed to take at least one game on the road. And then they back it up in Game 2 and just blow out the Celtics in back-to-back games. This is coming off of a super impressive series against the Knicks where Jimmy Butler just went off and showcased what he was capable of after already doing that in the first round against the Bucks. And the Heat are a team, they've had a lot of injuries. They lose Tyler Hero. Kyle Lowry's been banged up a lot. Victor Oladipo goes down in the first round. So you don't have a lot of depth. But the culture and the structure of this Heat team with the most undrafted players on its roster at 7 for an NBA Finals appearance, the guys just know how to play their role and they all stepped up. And I think if you said 3 months ago that Caleb Martin was going to be the second leading scorer heading into the NBA Finals for that team, and would be one of the main reasons they won the conference finals, we'd be crazy to think that, because I'm not gonna lie, on 2K he's one of the first players I trade because I'm like, I don't really care for him, but I'm really warming up to him because he was incredible in the Celtics series. And so yeah, the Heat start off 2-0, they come back to Miami, blow out again in game 3. Coming into the series they were only a 3% likelihood of winning the series, and so of course I put a couple more bets down. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm not necessarily advising you go that route, because when you lose it sucks. But I did win some money on the series, so I came out positive. So they go up 3-0. They have that monster win in game 3. All eyes are on the Celtics have to do something because this series is over. And I'm not going to lie, I thought it was going to be a 4-game sweep because there was just no hope. Tatum looked awful in the second half of every game. Brown couldn't hit water if he fell out a boat. None of the other role players were doing anything. Mazzulla was getting so outcoached. You would see a 20-0 run, not a single timeout called, nothing, no changes, nothing, not playing the right guys at the right time. They go back for game 4 in Boston. Finally becomes a competitive game where the Celtics do what they need to do. They flip the switch. Robert Williams starts giving Bam a lot of trouble, and that's one thing I'm worried about in this upcoming final series is Bam was terrible in the Eastern Conference Finals, and I think he's going to be terrible again going up against Jokic and Aaron Gordon. But the Celtics regain some momentum. Now Mazzulla looks like a genius coach because they rattle off 3 straight. Jaylen Brown looks good, but I had no doubt this series was going to finish how it did, because when it comes down to it, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum cannot get it done again. The turnovers, the fourth quarter mishaps here and there. Tatum, I think one of the games he had like 6 turnovers in the fourth quarter, which is awful. But they do have that hope. I mean, that game 6, guys, that was. Whoo, I was watching that game, and I saw the Celtics coming out winning that, and then the Heat just come back out of nowhere. Jimmy gets the horrible foul there, which was definitely, I do think it was a foul. It's hard to call that in that moment, but it was a foul. Hits all 3. I'm sitting there going, yep, the Heat just solidified the win. Tatum's not going to get the ball coming out of bounds because Spoelstra's not going to let that happen. Smart throws it up, which was a good shot because he's been on fire from 3 this series. Rattles around. Derek White's perfectly right there. It was just a crazy end to it emotionally watching as a Heat fan, or if you're watching as a Celtics fan. So that said, you're like, all right, we're going to game 7 with all of the momentum back in the Celtics. And what do the Heat do? The Heat do what they always do. They grind you for 4 quarters. Celtics come out hot the first 10 minutes, 5, 6, 7 minutes. What do the Heat do? They start grinding out and scoring here and there. And even though Jimmy was not great in the series and Bam wasn't great because Robert Williams was a defensive menace on both of them in the paint, they find a way to get it done. They get the role players in there. Duncan Robinson gets a few open looks. Gabe Vincent played an amazing series. And, of course, Caleb Martin just dominates. And the Celtics drop again. So maybe we'll do another episode where we talk about some of these playoff teams that disappointed and where they go from here, because I think the Celtics are right up there. Do they keep Jaylen Brown? Do they depart those 2? Do they go on from Mazzulla and bring in somebody else? All that being said. But the Heat find a way to get it done, and now we find ourselves sitting here with game 1, Nuggets-Heat. Nuggets are the heavy favorite, of course, because they are the most talented team. I'm not going to give my prediction right now, but the Nuggets look like the team to take this series. So as we're looking at this matchup, where do you guys see this series going? Matching up on paper, do the Nuggets have more in their favor matchup wise 1 through 5? The Heat might get Tyler Hero back in the middle of the series. They might not. Who knows? But where do you guys see this series kind of going?
Well, I'm not sure. Are we getting into official predictions yet, or is that towards the end?
Not necessarily predictions, just more like the matchup of the 2 teams stylistically. Look, I guess let's go this way. If the Nuggets were to go out and win this series, how do they win this series? And then vice versa, if the Heat were to try and make this a series where they win, what do they need to do to win? Who's going to cause the most fits for each other? Like, I mean, my first thing, again, I'll say with Bam. Bam's been struggling in the playoffs. He's had a few good games and a lot of bad games. He's been very bad against length. And, of course, Jokic has length. Now, Jokic isn't an amazing defender, but he's got a
Right.
lot of length, and Aaron Gordon's
Yeah.
very physical. So I could see this being a series where Bam struggles again, and the size of the Nuggets, even Michael Porter Jr., who's not a great defender, but he's got length. Even the size of all that could give them fits to where it makes it a tough series to win. So something kind of like that.
Well, a couple different things. I think if the Nuggets pull out and win, I think the big part is that Jokic, I think, matches up pretty well against that team. And I think their offensive, their entire starting five matches up well in terms of how they can space out that floor. So I don't know if it's going to boil down to how Spoelstra kind of decides he wants to go at Jokic, if he's going to try to get Bam on there one-on-one and just send help after two dribbles. Cool, but Bam doesn't have he's got a little bit of a slender frame, but kind of like AD does. So if Jokic wants, he could probably back him down, get good position in the paint, and do you collapse? Because if you do, he's going to throw it out there, and it's going to be a wide open three for a really capable shooter, Darvin Ham or something like that. So I think they're a little bit more evenly matched coaching, but I think Denver matches up really well against them. So if they do win, it's going to be because there's not going to be a good game plan to stop Jokic dumping it inside and the defense collapsing. Now, if the Heat win, I think that's going to be a little bit challenging, but I think there's a couple things they got going for him. Number one, I think Butler can do a really good job on Jamal Murray. I think he's fighting through screens. I don't think he's going under 9 times. And I think they'll probably try to chase somebody off and just send a little bit of a collapse in if Jokic is going to roll. So I think if the Heat win, number one, they figure out the high pick and roll with Jamal Murray and Jokic. I think I don't even want to say role players because I think that term kind of gets overused a little bit. I mean, if Caleb Martin can go out there and drop 20 points, he's not a role player. He's a guy who can get you a bucket. So, by the way, I don't want to pull LeBron and say I saw this coming, but watching the Martin twins in Nevada, I knew Caleb was going to be a bucket in the NBA. So I'm just going to throw it out there and claim credit for that. So I think much like the Celtics series, I think all of the players outside of Bam and Butler, as long as they can just hit perimeter shots. If Duncan Robinson can come in and actually, he don't even have to hit shots. If he can just come out there and be a distraction and pull guys out of the paint, allow Butler to cut and allow Lowry to get in there, and create shots there in the paint, then I think that's definitely a way they can win. If the Heat do win, it's going to be a long series. It's going to be a 6 or 7 game series.
Yeah, they have to grind it out.
They have to grind it out. I think they have to slow Denver down. They cannot get into a run and gun match. You can't get in a run and gun match if Kyle Lowry is your starting point guard. And I think they need to, if they can just figure out that high pick and roll in the half court, I could see them having a shot.
Yeah, we're going to look at this series as, I mean, it really could go either way. In the sense of, I think if Denver just does what they do every single day, if they just continue to stay true to who they are and their game plan, we're looking at a Denver team that could have a very easy time. They are the 1 seed in the West for a reason, and they held that 1 seed for what, the whole
Pretty much,
season, pretty
yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, I was calling that I was calling it that they were going to win the NBA title way back at the beginning of the season. Unfortunately, I probably never tweeted about it, and you
There's
guys
no
are just gonna have
proof.
to take my word
No
for it.
receipts.
There are no receipts. But I was like, man, I just feel like it's Denver's year, and that was before they even drafted Christian Braun. Like it was right at the end of last season, basically, to be more accurate. I was like, man, I think Denver's got this. They're a very complete team. They don't get rattled. They they are very poised, and of course, everyone, including their stars and role players, are very good at what they do, and they understand the assignment every single time. My issue is they're going against a hungry Heat team. My goodness, I mean, now the Heat have been historically pretty bad against the Nuggets. They're not. In recent years, they've got a pretty bad record against them. I think they lost both their games against the Nuggets this year and last year. They they of course don't have as much star power. I think that's pretty fair to say. There's a two-time MVP right across from them, staring them down in the face, and it's going to be a battle. Spencer, you're on point saying it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series if the Heat were to win. it's going to take a lot, and I think there's a formula there. If there's any coach that could figure out that formula, I trust Spo to be able to do that.
100%.
And
I agree.
it's the guy. The guy is a mastermind. It wasn't just LeBron running the show in Miami. So, it's great coaching. It's going to be a great coaching battle. It's going to be even better to see which stars actually step up, because I don't see anyone taking a back seat from the Nuggets side. But I'd be very interested to see if Duncan Robinson can kind of tap into who he was kind of in the bubble. He had a
Mhm.
great showing in the bubble, and I'd be interested to see if like Strus can get really hot. I think Miami's playing really well even without Tyler Hero, who they're saying their goal is to bring him back by game three. Um, he's supposedly good enough to come back by game one, but they might hold him off. I don't think you bring him back. I mean, I get it. He's a 20 point per game scorer, but they've been doing this. They've been running this train for all these playoffs without him. So it's tough to
Yeah, it's
it's
like, do you
tough. But
run the risk of him coming back and messing up the rhythm of like
the
a
flow,
Gabe Vincent who's going on off for now? Does it? I mean, he's obviously more talented than Lowry or Strus or Duncan Robinson, but the way the team's playing together, they know how they have to play without him on the court, and they're doing it. So it's like, do you run that risk of bringing him back, messing that up? I still think if you can, you get him out there because you got to have someone take the scoring load off of Jimmy. It can't just be hoping Caleb Martin goes 4 for 6 from three every game, or Gabe Vincent goes 3 for 5. So having that would definitely help. But when I look
yeah,
at this series, I think both teams stylistically match up well defensively. Like, I think the Heat can defend the Nuggets. I think they have enough pieces around them to where they run a really good zone that we saw against the Celtics, and they play well as a team defensively. So I think they could give Jokic and Murray some struggles to where it's a series that, like, for the Heat to do well, they have to keep it a low scoring game consistently, and they have to let KCP and Michael Porter Jr. and even Aaron Gordon win the series, in my opinion, to have a fighting chance. But then on the other side, I think the Nuggets, just the way they are spread out in their five, I think could give the Heat a lot of issues. Again, they've got a lot of length, and we saw how much that struggle was against the Celtics with Jimmy just struggling to get into the paint. And there were times where he wasn't even looking to shoot anymore because he just knew he was going over too many guys too big for him. Same thing with Bam. So I think the Nuggets could give the Heat a lot of fits as well. But I think what the series comes down to for me, and we're going to get in this as the next kind of big storyline, is the legacy for Jokic versus Jimmy. I think the Nuggets have a lot more to lose than what the Heat do. The Heat shouldn't be here. They should have lost to the Bulls in the play-in game if Jimmy didn't, have heroics late. They should have lost to the Bulls and not even be sitting here talking about the finals. They probably should have lost to the Bucks had things gone a little bit differently. They probably could have lost to the Knicks had things gone a little differently. If Boston would have taken care of business, they should have lost to Boston. So I think the Heat have all the momentum and energy their way, and they have nothing to lose. So when you have nothing to lose, you're going to go out there and lay it all down. I don't think if they lose in the finals that damages Butler's legacy at all, because then you can sit here and go, well, he needs a true star power running mate to get him over the top with Miami. But the Nuggets, on the other hand, they've been steadily getting better year by year by year. Jokic has been a 2-time MVP, probably should have been a third-time triple repeat. You can go back and forth on him and Embiid. I think the fact that Jokic is still standing, I don't know if that changes the voters' answers because it's a regular season award, not a postseason award. But
hmm
Jokic is consistent, does it all the time, and is still here. Again, I'm all for Embiid getting MVP because he's an ex-KU player and so happy for him. But the fact that Jokic is still standing here tells you something about the Nuggets team. They have all the right pieces, like we talked about. They're a near perfect constructed team. They lack a little bit at the backup 5 spot when Jokic isn't out there, but Jokic doesn't take a lot of time off, which is funny because he doesn't look like a guy that's in really good shape, but he can play. Um, so I think the Nuggets actually have more to lose because I think it could kind of damage Jokic's legacy more than Jimmy. Jokic has the ability right now to, I think, whether you think Giannis is the best in the league right now or not, the international players have been overtaking the league the last few years and have been basically the
Yeah.
baton's been passed off from LeBron, Steph, KD, whoever you want to mention that's non-international players. And you're getting Giannis, Jokic, Embiid are all the last several MVPs. Giannis gets his finals victory with the Bucks. So Jokic is kind of that next man up to basically, even though he's not going to be the face of the league, I think his legacy is if they win this series, he might supplant himself as the best player in the league. At least he's already in the conversation. But a finals victory, putting the Nuggets on the map officially, sets up his legacy long term. Whereas the Heat, if they lose, you'll go, well, no wonder they lost. They were playing with 7 undrafted guys in their rotation. They didn't have Tyler Hero, and Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo aren't the same thing as Jamal Murray and maybe Aaron Gordon, if you want to have that comparison. So I do think the Heat have a lot more going for them. But I think when it comes down to the series on paper, the Nuggets are probably still the better team. I think coaching basically cancels each other out. I think your star power almost cancels each other out. Their role players are pretty similar, but just the way the Nuggets play, they can score 130 and beat you. They can score 85 and beat you. Because they play their style of game and they don't let anybody change it. So I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a fun series, way more fun than people are going to give it credit for. Already they're talking about this is going to be a low-rated series. It's not going to be that much watched.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be a highly watchable series because one, everyone loves watching Jimmy play. The fact that it's not your usual teams, having the parity this year, I think gives it's an interesting angle. But do you guys agree or disagree with my thought on legacy-wise? It could negatively impact Jokic's legacy more than Jimmy's. I think it could positively impact both of them, obviously. But do you think losing the finals would hurt Jokic more or Jimmy more?
Oh man, I'd probably say I'd agree with you. I'd say it's Jokic because Jimmy just performs like crazy all playoffs. Performed in the bubble against the Lakers in the finals. There's that picture of him hunched over because he's exhausted. So I think people know that he's going to play well, and he's already proven himself as a playoff guy. I think the Nuggets are if they lose this series, we're going to start looking at them like we did the Jazz with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. If you recall, the
That's a
Jazz a
good
few
point.
years ago were the clear-cut number one team, number one seed in the West all season long. And what happened? They didn't perform in the playoffs. And so that's the first risk you run. I think if Jokic wins a ring, he's I don't think it's a conversation. I think he's top 10, 5 guy of all time. I mean, 2-time MVP, NBA champion, probably best passing big man in the world with the splits he has on offense.
Mm.
So you're talking about a legacy cementing top 10 at your position all time player for Jokic if he can get this done. So and people are going to say it's too early, whatever. I mean, he's already got the accolades, he has the stats. I mean, at this point, let's just not hesitate at that point. So I think for the team as a whole and for Jokic, there's way more on the line than Nuggets. I mean, the Heat are. I mean, this is a 1 seed going up against an 8 seed. This was a team. The Heat did not look like a very good team through a lot of the regular season. I mean, there was talks of blowing it up, get rid of Kyle Lowry, he can't play. They did not look like a very good team. Whereas the Nuggets have been just a machine since opening night. So I think they're heavily favored. I think it's a lot more on the line for them. And if the Heat lose, it's like, well, okay, they were supposed to lose. They're outmatched, they're outgunned.
Yeah, they weren't supposed to be here to begin.
No, Jimmy needs Damian Lillard to come from Portland or whatever the case may be. So
Oh, that'd be great. Actually, I am all on board with this. I'm going to speak this into existence. It's not going to happen, but in the offseason, somehow the Sixers trade Joel Embiid to the Miami Heat because Jimmy Butler would be the perfect running mate for Joel Embiid, which of course they had that opportunity, and the Sixers went with Tobias Harris and Ben Simmons. So anyway, not to get off on tangent, I'd like to save that for another day.
to quote Jimmy, Tobias Harris over me. That's the biggest. Yeah, that's the biggest question mark I can think of. But long story short, yes, I agree with your assessment there.
Yeah, talk about a David versus Goliath type of matchup. Really, I mean, an 8 seed that had to win 2 games to stay an 8 seed.
Yeah.
they've had a historic run. It's tough for me looking at this because I'm thinking while this run is pretty historic and great to watch, and their team is hungry, you got to think, are they running out of gas? Uh, this was looking a little bleak in that series against Boston. Um, they showed out, no doubt about it, in Game 7. Um, but my goodness, going into Game 7 before it started, I was like, it's gonna happen. This is gonna be the first team to come back from being down 0-3, and of course it happens against an 8 seed. It's like, they've got this 8 seed that's just being labeled on them, and rightfully so. But it's kind of cool because they get to play with house money. These guys get to go in with no expectations. They're not gonna be faulted for losing, but you know what? Doesn't that make you want to root for them so much? I mean, my goodness, I think I can kind of see how it actually wouldn't hurt Jokic too much in the legacy standpoint. Just to kind of contrast from you guys, I think he'll be right back where he is next year. I don't see him taking a step back. I think he's going to be in the MVP conversation next year, as he should. He's going to continue to dominate. This team can absolutely be right back where it is. Um, is it going to be a bad look when you lose to an 8 seed in the finals? Probably. But you know what? If there's any 8 seed, how cool is it that it's Jimmy Butler? I think the world would think less about how this impacts Jokic and more about how cool of a story it is for
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler. We want to see this so badly. That being said, I'm rolling with my gut. I mean, if we can jump into a prediction.
Yeah, let's jump right into it because after predictions, there's one final legacy storyline I want to touch on. But
Yeah,
yeah, let's just jump into predictions. Go ahead.
my prediction, my gut is Nuggets in 5. I the It's not because I hate the Heat. I love watching this storyline. I'm leaning towards they're running out of gas. They've struggled against the Nuggets this season, last season, and historically. Um, it really is the 1 seed in the West versus the 8 seed in the East. All these things start to mount up. I don't know if they have an answer for all the star power and even the role players. Um, you know, and I'll add Christian Braun into that. I don't think they have enough to take down the Nuggets. They shocked the world. They shocked the world taking out Milwaukee. My gosh, I thought it was going to be Denver versus Milwaukee in the
Hmm.
finals. That's what I thought at the beginning. But they really had a heck of a run. I just think it comes down to Nuggets in 5. I'll give the Heat 1. I think they ran out of gas. I love the look in Jimmy's eyes. I love the hunger in his eyes. But I just think it's over for him. Just the gut prediction.
Yeah, I would say I'll kind of go a little bit differently. I'll say Nuggets in 6, but I'll break down how this is going to transpire. I think they're going to go up 3-1, and I think that it's going to go back, and I think we're going to get a Jimmy Butler game where he carries them, gets them another 3-2, and then Denver closes it out in 6. That's my prediction. I'm with you that there's too much on offense. I don't think they match up well with them defensively outside of, I mean, Butler's versatility a little bit to guard the front court guys or the backcourt guys. So that's really, yeah. I mean, I had too much length. I think Porter Jr. is going to keep hitting threes, and then KCP is going to keep hitting threes. And I suppose a really good coach. I don't see how this team can stop Jokic. I just don't. I think the Lakers matched up better against Jokic than he does.
As much as I want to pick the Heat, because again, for those that know, most of you guys don't know me, so I've been a Heat fan since the day they drafted Dwayne Wade. And I honestly did not care for them the years they had LeBron as the big three. I thought that was kind of cheap because I was a big Dwayne Wade fan. So I always have been rooting for them. When they got Jimmy Butler, that reinstilled my excitement for watching them play because I love watching Jimmy play. And Spencer, I'm on the same line as you. I think they're going to have 1 or 2 games where Jimmy just puts the team on his back and makes this a series, kind of like that the bubble series with the Lakers, where he's
Yeah.
like, without that performance, there's no way they stood a fighting chance. Again, on paper, the Nuggets have way more talent, top to bottom. They play the way they need to play, and they win consistently. I don't think in this playoffs we've seen much vulnerabilities out of them as we have with the Heat. Um, I guess, man, I don't do it. My official prediction is also Nuggets in 6. Um, like you said, I do think it's 3-1 Nuggets at some point. I think Jimmy has a monster game 5 to take it to game 6. I think if the Heat can get it to 7, there's a good chance.
I'd agree.
Because again, they know how to fight and they don't give up. But the Nuggets are also coming off of like a week of rest, and the Heat are not getting that same rest. They had to really grind the last 4 games to squeak out a victory. So you would think that gives the Nuggets a lot more favor as well. But if they haven't played for a week, does that give them a little bit of rust? I don't know. So yeah, I'll go Nuggets in 6 as well. But if the Heat can win, I think if Miami can win game 5 and game 6 collectively, there's a really good shot that they take 3 in a row. If they can't win game 5, to me, it's over. Now, I think they're actually going to come out and win game 1 tomorrow. That's my hot take because they're plus money and they're kind of in a groove right now. And Denver has been off, so I think Denver's going to come out cold tomorrow, even though it's a home game. So that's my prediction for tomorrow night. But yeah, Nuggets across the board for the 3 of us. Jokic is probably your MVP. So yeah, before we wrap up though, I do want to do one more legacy talk because we are all KU fans, and the Nuggets do have a Kansas Jayhawk of their team in Christian Braun. And it is exciting that Christian Braun, I can't remember the exact statistic, he'd be like one of 5 players in NBA history to win the national championship in college and then immediately win the NBA championship in his rookie season. And he has that opportunity, and that's just incredible. I don't think anyone, if you looked at KU history as a whole, nobody would guess it'd be Christian Braun in that position. But he got drafted to a perfect roster for what he's capable of, even though he didn't play a lot in this last series against the Lakers. Surprisingly, too. That was another one. I was like, why is he not playing more? He brings something else to the team. Anyway, he has a huge potential legacy to get a ring in his first season as a rookie. And I think if he plays well in the series and wins, I think he pushes KCP out the door in the offseason because that guy's making $15 million next year and Christian Braun is not. That's another take there. But how exciting is it just as a KU fan for you guys? Like, does that make you want to root for the Nuggets because you got CB? Even though, I mean, we're not Nuggets fans, but they got CB on that team, and how can you not root for CB?
Yeah.
I can't fathom watching him on the court and booing the guy.
Yeah.
I love Christian. He is absolutely one of my favorite KU players of all time, and will be. Just, just such a character. I hope that he gets some minutes. I hope that he sees the floor. I understand from a coaching standpoint if you want to rely on your veteran players. Um, but we were just talking about how he's the last remaining rookie playing valuable rotation minutes on in the NBA playoffs, and it got to a point where now he's just getting 0 minutes. Look, I get it, but I think he can really take the pressure off some of the starters. If they're having a bad game, he can come in and bring some energy defensively. He's going to be the perfect spark plug for them, I think, in this series. So call him an X factor, a secret weapon, just off the bench. Doesn't have to be scoring 20 a game, but just playing that hard nosed defense that he learned at Kansas. I'm looking forward to it, and I got to root for the guy. He's a winner. That's what he does. He wins all the time. And I would absolutely just hit the retweet button 1,000 times when I see him holding not only a national championship but then an NBA championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to root against a team that has a guy like Christian on there. And so I think, I mean, he's got a shot to really play some impactful minutes. I think he's a really good person to plug in on this series, especially with, if they try to speed the Heat up. Good guy who runs the floor in transition, gets back on defense. So I could see Malone playing him in some quick 5-minute spurts, get some energy. He come in with any sort of 8-0 run, get Christian off the bench, put him on, one of their guys that's handling the ball. And if he can, I'll tell you what, if he can knock down just a few perimeter shots, he's buying himself a lot of minutes in this
Yeah.
series. If he can affect spacing and he can come in and still be the guy that gets you some boards, gets you some steals, I think he's just two or three threes away from being a really big impact player in the series. So I'm excited for him not only to see if he can win, but it'd be really cool to see him contribute as a rookie because, a lot of KU guys, especially ones that get drafted to the Kings, rookie seasons are not exactly our strong suit for KU alumni guys. So it'd be really cool to see one go out and not only win a title, but contribute on a title contending team.
Well, there you have it, guys. The Nuggets in 6, Heat Nuggets start tonight. Game 1 tonight in Denver. We here feel Nuggets in 5, Nuggets in 6. So Nuggets as the overarching winner. And if that's the case, then your former Kansas Jayhawk Christian Braun gets a second title in 2 years. And then I don't know where you go from there. You've accomplished everything from a winning standpoint in 2 seasons. So then it's just getting on the court more. But yeah, thanks guys for joining us tonight. I don't know how much viewership we're going to get on this. We don't talk a lot of NBA. I know it's a lot of KU basketball, so we're hoping our KU basketball people carry over into this episode. If you guys do want to hear some more NBA stuff, I mean, Spencer and I have like 50 different podcasts lined up of things we want to discuss and we've been wanting to discuss for NBAs for a while. So we got plenty of stuff for the off season too. But yeah, hit us up on Twitter at KCSA Pod, Facebook, Instagram. Give us your thoughts on the series, what you're feeling. I'll tweet about it throughout the series too, and kind of get everyone's take on it. If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you. Hit that subscribe button. Help us continue to grow. We now have almost 4 videos with over 1,000 views. Hopefully by the time the series is over, we'll be at 5, or at least the 4th one will have hit. Stay tuned though. We are going to announce what our giveaway is going to be coming up here in the next couple days for hitting the 1,000 viewers 3 times now. So super excited for that. If you're listening on Spotify, again, you can subscribe to us there. You can also rate the podcast. No matter where you are listening from or watching from, be sure to share with your friends. And as always, guys, even though this is an NBA episode, rock chalk.
Rock chalk.
Yes, sir, rock chalk.